Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijanavalabha Girivaradari Gopijanavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shadashisha Mother Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shadashisha Mother Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikha Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhudityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gurunga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Fifth Canto, entitled The Creative Impetus, Chapter 14, The Forest of Enjoyment. We're on text 37. So, what should we do?
We've been doing one word at a time.
All right. Okay.
And then go through
All right. Evam Vita Vyatisanga Vivida Vairanubando Pi Purvasana Mitta Udvahat Yatapavahati. So I just read the word by word? All right. Evam in this way. Vita Viti Sangha, because of monetary transactions. Vivridha, increased. Vaira Anubandhanaha, having relationships of enmity. Api, although. Purva Vasanaya, by the fructifying results of previous impious activities. Mittaha, with each other. Udvahati, become united by means of the marriage of sons and daughters. Atta, thereafter. Apavahati, they give up the marriage or get a divorce. Translation. Commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Although people may be enemies, in order to fulfill their desires again and again, they sometimes get married. Unfortunately, these marriages do not last very long, and the people involved are separated again by divorce or other means. Purport. As stated previously, every conditioned soul has the propensity to cheat, even in marriage. Everywhere in this material world, one conditioned soul is envious of another. For the time being, people may remain friends, but eventually they become enemies again and fight over money. Sometimes they marry and then separate by divorce or other means. On the whole, unity is never permanent. Due to the cheating propensity, both parties always remain envious. Even in Krishna consciousness, separation and enmity take place due to the prominence of material propensities. Om Gyanativarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Vanmaditam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kadidavachalam Pangam Langayate Gadim Yakipadamaham Vande Shri Gurun Denitaridam Vancha Kapadirabhisha Kipasandibevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. Although people may be enemies, in order to fulfill their desires again and again, they sometimes get married. Unfortunately, these marriages do not last very long, and the people involved are separated again by divorce or other means. So the propensity to cheat is being brought up again, of that propensity being a propensity of the conditioned soul, wanting to cheat others, and also cheating oneself. It's not that people just cheat others, they also cheat themselves in the process. But specifically here is being brought up in this particular verse and purport, marriage, and how people, although they're enemies, they get married to fulfill their desires, and then after some time, they become separated by divorce or other means. I mean, sometimes also people get together on the basis, they think they're friends or they think they're compatible, and then there's divorce. Just like within America, I don't know what the percentage is now of divorce. Some time ago, people were saying 50%, but it probably went up now, maybe 60%, I don't know, 70, 80, 100%. Also within, actually, the Prabhupada mentions, even in Krishna consciousness, we could say ISKCON, of course, Krishna consciousness, anyways. There's also other devotees, besides devotees in the Krishna conscious movement. But whether inside Krishna, ISKCON or outside of ISKCON devotees, those in practicing Krishna consciousness, there's also divorce there. And specifically, within ISKCON, I don't know what the percentage is. Unfortunately, it's higher than it should be. And as Prabhupada says, that is due to material propensities. In other words, people just can't get along. And why can't people get along? Because there's too much prominence of selfishness, there's too much prominence of, and selfishness is a product of the lower modes of material nature, ignorance and passion. A selfish person, they don't even want to raise a finger to help somebody. Now, of course, that's extreme, but there's different degrees, and that selfishness enters relationships and destroys them. Marriage and otherwise. And that's all due to the mode of ignorance and passion. That's due to, lack of sattva gun. So the idea is that if devotees are able to rise to the level of the mode of goodness in their activities and practice with, of course, with adding the practices of Krishna consciousness, then there'll be a lot less of this, or practically none. It won't exist. But it is interesting here. Here it's been, although people may be enemies, in order to fill the desires again and again, they sometimes get married. That's really extreme. In other words, you know there's no chance of it working. The other person knows there's no chance of it working, but still you get together. Anyways, our Rajendraనందన Prabhu told me one time, he might have said it in class, but whether it's in class or outside of class, but he said that there was one beautiful woman, and by material estimation, and she wanted to get with this particular man. Anyways, for whatever reason, actually he didn't go into all that. The basic thing he went into was that this woman, she just married this man, and she was kind of a famous woman. He was a famous man, and then she was there was a reporter, and they're asking her questions, this and that, and one of the questions is, this reporter asked her was, so how do you feel now that you just married a man who's 88 years old? And then she said, 88 years old? I thought he was 98, You understand. Because 98 you're closer to... So, this is an example of somebody getting together on the basis of whatever, just trying to empty out the guy's pockets or something like that. But it goes both ways. Whatever the selfish desires are, people are getting together. And of course, because they're getting together on the wrong basis or under the wrong principles, of course there's separation. So, all right, we'll read the next one. This is text 38. What was that? Yes. Okay, let's see here. The path of this material world is full of material miseries, and various troubles disturb the conditioned souls. Sometimes he loses, and sometimes he gains. In either case, the path is full of danger. Sometimes the conditioned soul is separated from his father by death or other circumstances. Leaving him aside, he gradually becomes attached to others, such as his children. So a father dies and become attached to children, to his children. In this way, the conditioned soul is sometimes illusioned and afraid. Sometimes he cries loudly out of fear. Sometimes he is happy maintaining his family, and sometimes he is overjoyed and sings melodiously. In this way, he becomes entangled and forgets his separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead since time immemorial. Thus, he traverses the dangerous path of material existence, and on this path, he is not at all happy. Those who are self-realized simply take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to get out of this dangerous material existence. without accepting the devotional path, one cannot get out of the clutches of material existence. The conclusion is that no one can be happy in material life. One must take to Krishna consciousness. Purport. By thoroughly analyzing the materialistic way of life, any sane man can understand that there is not the least happiness in this world. However, due to continuing on the path of danger from time immemorial and not associating with saintly persons, the conditioned soul under illusion wants to enjoy this material world. Material energy sometimes gives him a chance at so-called happiness, but the conditioned soul is perpetually being punished by material nature. It is therefore said, Danya jane rajayena nadite chubaya. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20, text 118. Materialistic life means continuous unhappiness, but sometimes we accept happiness as it appears between the gaps. Sometimes a condemned person is submerged in water and hauled out. Actually, all of this is meant for punishment, but he feels a little comfort when he's taken out of the water. This is the situation with the conditioned soul. All the Shastras therefore advise that one associate with devotees and saintly people. Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastra Koya Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sange Sarva Siddhi Hoy. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 54. Even by little association with devotees, the conditioned soul can get out of this miserable material condition. This Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to give everyone a chance to associate with saintly people. Therefore, all the members of this Krishna consciousness society must themselves be perfect sadhus in order to give a chance to fallen conditioned souls. This is the best humanitarian work. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, it not only describes the problems, but it also describes, it also gives the solutions. So in this chapter, we've been hearing a lot about the problems of material existence and how there's so many issues with it, and how one cannot be happy in this forest of material enjoyment. But there's also the solution given. And the solution that's being brought up here is that those who are self-realized simply take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to get out of this dangerous material existence. So we have to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the solution. And without doing that, then there's no chance of getting out of the clutches of material existence. We can't. So we have to take shelter. And I mean, any sane person or any intelligent person or half-intelligent person, they could see that there's a lot of problems in the material world. Like Srila Prabhupada said, the hippies of the 60s and 70s in America, they knew the problems. They knew the problems of material existence, but the issue is they didn't have any solutions to it. And you see a lot of people like that, a lot of philosophers and thinkers. They write books about the nature of the material world and all its problems, but then what's the solution? They don't have it. So the Bhagavatam gives a solution. Take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the problem is, with that, is that the conditioned souls are extremely stubborn. They just want to try anything and everything besides taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like Kanai Balai and myself, we stopped off and visited Govardhan Prabhu while he was in his office in La Jolla. He's got a nice office. He's got the table set up, he's got an umbrella, and he's got Srila Prabhupada's books there. And he looks out and he sees the ocean's right there, you know. Of course. Sunny, right? Fresh air. So anyways, he's out there, sitting out there, and Kanaya, Balai, and myself were visiting him for a few minutes, and then I saw Govardhan Prabhu's, you know, stopping people. Oh, here you go. We got meditation, yoga books, and you see people walk by and they're like this. And then they keep on going. You know. And then Govardhan Prabhu, oh, here. And you see people walk by. Another person. No. I mean, to shake your head like this is like, I mean, it may seem like a simple gesture, right? Oh, you're just shaking. That's like extreme aversion, you know. When you're shaking your head like this, that's extreme aversion. And someone may say, oh, well, they don't know. They don't know. They just think it's meditation books or yoga books, or they're not really into meditation or yoga, or they don't know who this man is on the table, and or they don't like being stopped by people. We could say so many reasons, right? But ultimately, this is just a deep aversion to Krishna. This is the result of them just wanting, or this is them just wanting to try anything, literally anything, and practically everything to be happy, besides taken to Krishna consciousness. Why? Because there's also people who walk by Govardhan Prabhu's table, they stop, they talk with him, they're happy to meet him, they give a donation, they take a set of Srila Prabhupada's books, they go home, they read them, and they come to the temple. And they become devotees, just like that couple from Iran, not couple, the mother and mother and daughter from Iran. They met Govardhan Prabhu right there in La Jolla, and they kept on coming to the temple and practicing Krishna consciousness. So in other words, it's not an innocent thing when somebody walks by and goes like this, you know. It's not innocent at all. It's Krishna fulfilling their desires. In their heart, they don't want anything to do with Krishna consciousness. So Krishna says, okay, even though you don't want anything to do with Krishna consciousness, I'm still going to arrange that my devotees are out there preaching my message. And even though you don't want it, we're still going to give you the chance. And still, you walk by and you shake your head no, and therefore I'm going to fulfill your desire. You don't want it? Okay, you're not going to get it. Oh, that's right there. You know. So yeah, this is the problem, that the conditioned soul is willing just to try anything and practically everything to be happy, besides Krishna consciousness. Now, of course, over time, these people get punished by the material nature, or you could say they punish themselves, inflict misery on themselves. It's being brought up here. Like Bhajanarayan Swami was given a class some time ago, and he asked the devotees about anyways, there's two guys. One guy, so one guy, he was hitting his head against the wall. You know, bam! You know, just kept on hitting his head against the wall. And another guy walked in and said, "What are you doing?" And then the guy said, "Well, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm hitting my head against the wall." And he did it again. Bam! You know. And then the man asked, "Why are you doing that? You know, that's kind of strange. Why are you hitting your head?" I mean, imagine you walk upstairs in the ashram and, you know, Tyler's in his room and he's hitting his head against the wall. Bam! You know, and you're like, "What's going on, Tyler?" And Tyler's like, "Oh, I'm having a hard time being the temple commander." You know? No, but imagine he does that, then you're naturally say, "Well, what's going on?" So anyways, this man asked this guy who's hitting his head against the wall, "Why are you doing that?" And the man said, "Well, Because when I stop hitting my head against the wall, it feels so good, There's some relief, and it's true. There's some relief. It's not like here. It's Srila Prabhupada mentions it over and over again in his books. It's mentioned often enough. But he says that there was a type of punishment where a criminal would be punished by authorities, and they would grab his head and they would just dunk it in the ocean or water, practically to the point of him dying. And then, right at that time, somehow, I don't know how I guess you could time it out or whatever, but they timed it out. And then right when the time was up, then they lift up his head and they let him get a grasp of air, And then again. Now, at the time of him, being up and getting that grasp, getting that, what would you say? Not grasp? Gasp? Yeah, gasp of air. I said grasp. Gasp of air. There is some relief. I mean, if you're on the point of drowning, and then your heads lift up, you get some air, gasp of air. There is relief. I mean, you could say it feels good. There's some relief, right? You can't deny that there's relief. Just like if you're out in the desert and you're on the practically on the verge of dying, and somebody gives you a nice cold bottle of water, there's relief. But then, they take off in their car and you're suffering there out in the desert again, up to the point of death. And then you need more relief. So there is relief, but then again, back in the water. So Srila Prabhupada said that this is material life, that there's a lot of suffering in it, and we've been hearing about that. There's a lot of suffering. But because people get some temporary relief sometimes, they say, okay, all right, I could continue. Not so bad, right? Just like people who are working, of course, in the world, it's a necessary thing for a lot of people. But a lot of people, they don't like their jobs. And some people, they actually hate their jobs. And what does that mean? It means that they're just suffering, that they're struggling, they're suffering, they feel they're working too hard. Maybe their boss is pushing them too much. I mean, sometimes bosses really push people, overtime, and we got to get this project done and just like really pushing. And then maybe in their social life or in their romance life or whatever, in their own personal life, they're also suffering, struggling, things aren't working out, right? But then Friday, right? TGIF, thank God it's Friday. And they hop in their car and they drive downtown and they go to their favorite bar. They sit there and then they say, yes, I would like a, Jack Daniels on the rocks. Here, give it to me right now. And they drink that liquor or beer or whatever they're fancy. And then they feel, okay, some relief, some temporary relief. And you could say that it is relief. There is some relief there, else why would people do it? There is relief there. Just like there's relief when a guy gets his head pulled up from almost being drowned, right? There's relief. But the Srimad Bhagavatam would say, all right, there's relief there, but there's a lot more than that. In other words, there's a lot more available. There's a lot more happiness available. This isn't even happiness. This is just relief. But there's a lot more there's happiness. There's real happiness available. And we don't have to be on this suffer like a dog and then temporary relief program. that's not good. We don't have to be on that program. So, so then, okay, well, how do we get off that program? Because practically in the material world, everybody's on that program. They're on the suffer like a dog, temporary relief program. Suffer like a dog, right? Of course, when people say suffer like a dog, like, suffer like a dog? What do you mean? I mean, dogs are really good these days, right? They got, big mansions and, right? Or they're in their apartment, they get treated well, right? Whatever you want to say. Suffer like a criminal. You say it like that, because most people will accept that. Because when you say suffer like a dog, and people, they have dogs, and they know the dogs, In India, dogs suffer, street dogs, and kids throwing rocks at them, they're not getting proper food, diseases, and so on. So to suit the American, right, ethos, we'll say, suffer like a criminal. Nobody likes being locked up. And if they do, it's a mental disease, it's a sickness. So suffer like a criminal, and then get some temporary relief. You get to, or a person gets to, every Sunday they get a special brownie, right, in the prison or something. Oh, this is really nice. All right, okay. Let's see. So the idea is that we don't have to be on this program. Suffer like a criminal, temporary relief. Suffer like a criminal, temporary relief. But we could be on the program of don't suffer like a criminal, and ever expanding happiness. It gets higher and higher, expanding, gradually. And how do we do that? Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastra Koi. Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. Just by associating with devotees. Of course, we have to be careful when associating with devotees, because just like fire's great. I mean, everybody is benefiting from fire worldwide. People are cooking in every single culture of the world, practically. And benefiting, right? They're nourishing their body and so on. Now, fire, although it's also heating, right? It heats humans. It helps cook the food, right? There's a lot of benefits of fire, but fire could also burn down a house. Fire could also severely burn a person's body. So similarly, devotees, associated with devotees, it could be very uplifting. It could be very invigorating. It could be ecstatic, right? But it could also, by not associating with devotees properly, they could also burn us, right? It means not treating them properly, not dealing with them properly, Vaishnava aparad, then we suffer. So Prabhupada says, this Krishna conscious movement is therefore trying to give everyone a chance to associate with saintly people. Therefore, all the members of this Krishna consciousness society must themselves be perfect sadhus. Oh, perfect sadhus. That could be challenging, right? We hear about the sadhus and the shastras, right? Titikshava, karunika, tolerant, merciful. Sarvadehinam, friendly to all living entities. They don't have any enemies. They have all good qualities. So it's a high mark, right, to be a perfect sadhu. But that's what Srila Prabhupada says we need to do. And why is that? In order to give a chance to fallen conditioned souls, a chance for them to be Krishna conscious, a chance for them to associate with devotees. Because we say, oh, associate with devotees, associate with devotees, associate with devotees, right? And then people come to the temple and there's not any devotees, or there's a bunch of materialistic devotees, or self-centered devotees, or selfish devotees, or neophyte devotees, who are just like everybody else. But actually, it's actually worse to be in the garb, or to be in the representing religion, and to be like everybody else. It's actually worse than just being an ordinary materialistic person in some ways. Because ordinary materialistic people think, you know, some guy, like, you're out there and, you know, some ordinary guy meets another ordinary guy, and the guy's just whatever, lusty, self-centered, greedy, etc. person. And you think, oh, so what? You know, it's surprise, surprise. You know, just like every other, you know, douchebag in downtown San Diego, right? Excuse me, but big deal, right? So what? Like, surprise, surprise. But if they come to the temple and they meet somebody who's not up to standard, right? Or who's not a good representative, or who's making mistakes in terms of selfishness and greed and anger, etc., all these types of things, and people think, oh, he's representing religion. He shouldn't be like those people, which is true, actually. They actually have a good point, that he's representing religion, or we're representing religion, so we shouldn't be like those people, the ordinary materialist people. It's a good point. And okay, or of course you could say, oh, well, we're not perfect, and, you know, this and that. We make mistakes. So, hey, give us a little slack, right? Okay, sure, that's also there. But that could only go so far. And we shouldn't use that as an excuse. And Srila Prabhupada says here, he says we should be perfect sadhus. So, in other words, we should try for that. So that's a challenge to us. But it is possible, and, you know, we could work on that. So, and he says this is the best humanitarian work. So to be a devotee, that's actually the best preaching, right? Like Srila Prabhupada was such a great preacher, right? The best preacher. Why is that? Because he was, you know, such a pure devotee, such an elevated person, that people, I mean, people were very inspired. And still, I mean, Prabhupada ignited a whole revolution amongst his disciples, and many of them are still around and going strong and enthusiastic. Prabhupada started that. That's Srila Prabhupada. And then they are inspiring the next generation, right? Igniting within them some enthusiasm. And of course, that doesn't mean because the Srila Prabhupada disciples are igniting this within us or within the next generation, that doesn't mean Srila Prabhupada's out of the picture, obviously. Srila Prabhupada's also inspiring. It's not that Prabhupada's inspiration has stopped. But you could just see the power that Srila Prabhupada had to inspire, because he was sold out to Krishna, right? He's taken full shelter of Krishna. So that's what he's encouraging us to do. So yeah, there are all these problems of material existence. They do exist. There is such a thing as criminal temporary relief program. Suffer like a criminal and then temporary relief program. But there is a way to get out of all this, and that is by associating with sadhu, saintly persons. And Srila Prabhupada is not just saying that, oh, you associate with saintly persons, and then we think, okay, great, I could just associate with the saintly persons, and I'm good to go. But Prabhupada says that we have to be the saintly persons. Not that we just, oh, okay, I associate with devotees, advanced devotees, or devotees. but I could just remain as I am. But Prabhupada says we have to be the saintly persons. And then he says we should give that association to others. And that's the best humanitarian work. So does anybody have any, I think, Govardhan, you had a question or comment?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Balarama. You know, you mentioned suffering like a dog, and in the West, they don't see that.
Yeah.
So I met some lady, she looked, pretty wealthy in that regard.
Her dog looked wealthy too.
And when I was telling her about karma and reincarnation, she said, I want to be a French poodle in my next life in Beverly Hills. So she's thinking this is the best, life she can get. And another thing is, yes, it's difficult getting people to the table, but we do meet people that are inspired after speaking to us, I've had, who cares about me, but I've had a few times where people have told me, this is one of the best conversations I've ever had. It was deep, there's meaning to it, so thank you for encouraging me.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also like, there was this girl, she came to the temple on Sunday, and I said, oh, how did you come to the temple? How were you invited to the temple? And she said that somebody in Balboa Park, I think it was Vijay Prabhu, maybe it was somebody else, but you two could tell me if it was somebody that you met, but she said that she went to the park specifically to get a Bhagavad Gita. I don't know. Maybe there's a number of people like that. And I said, oh, what happened? Did you lose your Bhagavad Gita? She said, yeah, I had a Bhagavad Gita in the past, but I moved and I lost it. So I went to Balboa Park just to get a Bhagavad Gita. So I said, okay, great. So she came and she attended the kirtan, and she said, oh yeah, I really liked the kirtan. And she says, even though I wasn't dancing, I was clapping on the side, participating. And she went over here and she got a box of prasadam, and she brought one for her husband home. So we shouldn't think, in other words, Kali Yuga hasn't progressed to the point where we go out and no one's going to be interested. So in other words, there's still chance and time for a lot of people to be interested. Pious people, good-hearted people, spiritually inclined people. So they are out there. When devotees go on Harinam here or throughout the world, there's always people who just don't want anything to do with it. But there's a bunch of people. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's great genius, right? That's the Sankirtan movement's great genius, is that you get people moving, chanting and dancing, and aside from music being a universal language, it's not just music, it's mridanga and kartal and the Hare Krishna mantra, right? It's spiritual, it is transcendental. So not only do you have the benefit of this idea of music being the universal language, in other words, people could go out and play music, wherever you are in the world, and you get people kind of going. That's one thing, but it is also transcendental. So it's extremely, the most powerful actually. And you see when devotees go out, people, they dance and they clap and they, chant, and then they also get books. And they feel some happiness. They feel pleasure. That's why they're dancing. You can't dance unless you feel something, right? You have to feel some pleasure to dance. So they're feeling something, right? And because it's spiritual, it's transcendental, they think, okay, hey, let me get some books too, and then they read it. Hey, I had an interesting experience, I was feeling happiness. What is this, anyways? And they start reading about the Hare Krishna mantra. So there are still people out there. So we shouldn't think, oh well, I give up, right? There's still people out there. All right, you had something to me?
Yeah, I just had a small comment. This is probably why you see many people in the West and in the world. It's following your example on suffering and relief. Why people are getting interested in working out so much, like it's becoming an everyday thing. They're getting addicted to it because they get into a challenge for the body, physical challenge, and then they get a relief from that challenge. And I often see people also distributing books at the table that people say, look at a sign and see meditation. And they say, well, working out is my meditation. Or
Yeah.
smoking is my meditation,
Yeah.
But, if truly they don't have clear understanding of what meditation really means.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah, sometimes people think meditation's boring, or they don't. They're looking for something. Usually the people who are, when they say, oh, smoking or whatever it is, usually people are, mode of passion and, right, those types of people. But it's a lack of understanding, because the happiness of meditating on Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna and engaging in Krishna consciousness, it is intense. And also it's a lack of understanding, in the sense that people think, oh, well, if I become a meditator, I just have to, sit there and meditate all the time. But Arjuna wasn't, right? He was shooting arrows. He was real warrior. So in other words, there's all different things a person could do for Krishna. They could be a warrior for Krishna. They could, be this, that, so many different things. So it's not just stereotype, one shoe fits all type of thing. So, yes.
Prabhupada was on a morning walk one time, and he asked the devotees, what is the universal language? And many devotees said, oh, music. Prabhupada said, no, it's rhythm. And I think that, that's of course, I obviously have a propensity for that. But
What's the difference between music and rhythm?
well, rhythm is part of music.
Yes.
But there's different kinds of music all over the world. And some people might not like, certain kinds of music. But the central element of rhythm is centrally attractive. Just like when we go out, the people are into, if the drumming is really nice and we're playing in tune, we're singing, of course the singing is nice and that attracts. But that's what gets them going.
Yeah.
That's what gets them moving, you know what I mean? If the rhythm is really happening.
Yeah.
And there's also something in I've discovered in my study of the Sanskrit and everything called Taurya Trikena. Taurya Trikena is music, playing musical instruments, dancing, and singing. And you can see how universal that is as an attractive force. People like to go to clubs and this and that, and in every country there's their own kind of dancing, singing, and musical instruments, So Lord Chaitanya, the Hare Krishna mantra is there, but it's presented with a package of singing, dancing, and musical instruments. And so people sometimes are attracted by that singing, dancing, music, but they're getting the Hare Krishna mantra. And that's what's, and that's what they remember. I can't get it out of my mind, people. And so it's a phrase now that it's genius. It's genius, right? It's very effective, perfectly suitable for Kali Yuga. If you may be completely illiterate, but you can be attracted by the rhythm and the dancing and so forth. And you stay around to hear, and you even may join in, and in this way you get curious. And then if there's a book explaining it, that's the complete program of preaching. And that's how the movement has grown. By the way, I just wanted to recommend one video, because this is the age of YouTube. A few days ago, there was a YouTube on, the featured YouTube on dandavats.com. Was they described it, it's heretofore undiscovered video of Ukraine. Did you see it? Ukrainian devotees. And it was one of the festivals. They've had a festival there in September since a long time, 25 years or so, and it's grown really large. This was an old one. It must have been 20 years ago. There was Hari Sari dancing, he's a little ill now. He's completely well. And no one had a wireless mic. Everything had wired, it was old. Everyone looked younger. But the devotees were so ecstatic. The whole pandal, big tent, full of Ukrainian devotees, and everyone was dancing and chanting very ecstatically. If you really want to get them live and check it out, I'll give you the URL.
Yes.
Or maybe Dimitri can correct me, but I was talking to Dimitri, and he said when he first came to the Krishna lounge, and he started chanting, he said when he went home, he started chanting like from the top of his lungs.
Nice. 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 Any online comment or question?
We have two person in YouTube. They have question.
Okay.
So
Well, they could ask.
the first question in the YouTube chat I see is, how are a couple enemies from the beginning?
How or what?
How are couple
Oh.
enemies
So
from
can
the
you
beginning?
tell me who's asking this?
The name is in the YouTube chat is Jemin, but I don't know if
Jimmy?
it is her Jemin. I don't know if it is
Janine,
her
okay.
real name or not.
Okay. Well, how from the beginning are the enemies? Well, practically it's just meaning that enemies. What does enemies means? Enemy means you don't like each other, right? You just don't like each other. Or you could say you hate each other. Hate is just means strongly dislike each other. But even though you strongly dislike each other, if the person has something the other person wants, then they'll have some relation with them just to get what they want. And then once they get what they want, gone. You know, you see that in countries sometimes, like big leaders, and they actually hate each other, but they're like working together just to get what they want. And once they get what they want, then done with the relationship, or maybe they kill the other person or whatever. So that's how it is, that how can they be enemies from the beginning and get married? Well, enemies mean they don't like each other, they hate each other, but because they have something that the other person wants, whether it's, usually a lot of it's revolving around money, because money, right, is that which gets things going in this world. Or whatever it may be some position, social position, or something, some benefit. Then they get together, and then once they have it, once they've obtained their goals, then they separate. So that's what it means.
Yes, bro, there is one more question in the YouTube chat. So the question is, how do I identify a saintly person?
How do you identify? Okay. Well, they have to have a big beard. Nice grown out beard. They have to be wearing saffron. No, well, you identify a saintly person by, first of all, by the association they keep, because you are who you associate with. So a saintly person will associate with other saintly people. Just like crows and swans, you don't find them mixing. Right? The crows are out eating garbage, and the swans are very peacefully gliding in the clean, ponds somewhere, right? Eating lotus, whatever, stems or this and that. So they're not mixing together. So that's one thing. Aside from them not mixing together, they have different interests. A saintly person and a non-saintly, they have different interests. Just like the crows, their interest is in garbage. And the swans aren't interested in that. So devotees, they're interested in Krishna. They're interested in Krishna consciousness. They're interested in higher topics. Whereas other people, they're not. They're interested in other things. So you tell a saintly person who they associate with, their interest, and also their qualities. Right, in the whole 16th chapter Bhagavad Gita, which whoever the person asking the question, they could study the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the divine and demoniac nature. So it describes the demoniac nature and the divine nature. So in that way you could tell who is a devotee, who's not a devotee on that basis. But a saintly person is meant to have particular qualities. mentioned in scripture, Titikshava, Karunika, and the Lord Kapila Dev's teachings. They're merciful, they're tolerant, and so on. So they have to have these particular qualities, and a lot of these qualities are described in the 16th chapter, the divine qualities. So they have to have those qualities. Now, someone may say, "Oh, well, I know some saintly people, and they don't have those qualities," right? Well, maybe due to past bad association, maybe due to so many things, they haven't developed or reawakened all the good qualities. That may be true, but they can still be considered a sadhu, or saintly person, on the basis of them being fixed in their determination to serve Krishna. Api chet sararachayo bhajate mama nanyabak, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Even if one commits the most abominable activity, if they're fixed in their determination to be a devotee, to continue in Krishna consciousness, they should be considered saintly. So, and Srila Prabhupada would quote that verse as a definition of a sadhu quite often. So yeah, who they associate with, what their interests are, and what are their qualities. And even though they may have not reawakened all those qualities, divine qualities, still they should be considered sadhu if they're fixed in their determination. So that's a little bit. And they don't have to have a big beard or, etc. But, so, all right. Tapas?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. Really
Okay.
nice.
Thank you. All right, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Who is the second person who asked the question, Tapas?
Her name on the YouTube is Sid Dasi.
Is it?
It doesn't show her full name, it
Dasi?
just shows Sid Dasi. I don't know who is that Mataji.
All right. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.